Okay, and then moving on to our last question. Analysts expected the GDP growth to be at 3%, is actually at 2%. Are we expecting the stock prices to go up or down? Down. Okay. So yes, if the Feds ease monetary policy, then stock prices definitely will go up. We're loosening and ensuring that there's more money flowing to keep everything going. If the unemployment rate goes up, then yes, stock prices will go down because we're expecting that there will be less people available with disposable income or money to invest in stocks or either even spend money for those companies to earn and turn a profit. And then if the GDP growth is expected to be at 3%, is actually at 2%, definitely down because we're talking in percentages. While these numbers are not big, we're still talking about billions and trillions of dollars that did not happen from a growth standpoint. Meaning many companies fell short on their earnings, and so you had a lot, and that definitely would be the first onset of a recession coming, and nothing about that is positive. And so we'll do one more. Nike, there was a huge surge in people buying up Nike stock. There was a huge surge in people selling off Walmart stock. And then Congress signed a stimulus package into law. So with people buying up Nike stock, what do we think? Just remember last year what happened with Robinhood and GameStop and what was the other? AMC and BlackBerry. And then if a lot of people sell Walmart stock, there's a huge sell-off. Okay. And then the last one is Congress signs a stimulus package into law. I'm down, up, down. Down. Okay. So it's two ups and a down. Definitely, if people are buying up stock, then the price of that stock will go up. And then if people are selling off stock, right? Like, and we're talking loads and loads of stock being sold off, then Walmart stock will go down. With Congress signing a stimulus package into law, it actually would help stocks go up. It means that Congress is trying to do all that they can from a fiscal policy standpoint to keep the economy uh, afloat. And so this is actually a positive thing if Congress signs a stimulus package into law, because they're also putting money into the hands of the average consumer. But also typically what happens is businesses get an influx of cash as well. And so investing is both intellectually intimidating and emotionally distressing. So we need to address our feelings before practicing any investment strategy, right? because equity means ownership, and ownership is the pathway to wealth. Hollis, I will make sure that we address your question at the end. I don't want you to think that you're being annoyed, but we will address that. And so there are a number of market forces that affect stock prices. And when we understand those, we can easily manage stress to some extent, right? And that we feel when stock prices rise. And so there's things that are specific to individual and entity industries. So like the earnings, the analyst expectations, company gossip, those are things that directly impact factors in things that we are kind of out of the control of the typical and the average stockholder or shareholder or investor. Is from a macroeconomic, right? Like we have not much control over GDP. We have hardly any control over monetary policy, unemployment, fiscal policy, supply and demand, geopolitical factors, right? None of us can do hardly anything to really persuade Russia not to invade another country. Unfortunately, though, that still has an impact on us, whether that's positive or negative. And so it's understanding that these are things that are sometimes out of our control completely. And so how we manage that going into something, because your money, once it's gone, right? And so understanding what you're able to play with and what you're able to have at your disposal. And so we want to get back to rich versus wealthy, right? And so at the beginning, I asked you what were definitions of wealth. And so in helping to get there, we want to talk about the three financial statements. Your balance sheet, which helps us to calculate our net worth and develop financial goals around wealth creation. Cash flow statements, which help us see how well we manage our money, determine how we can achieve our financial goals with our net discretionary income. And then you have your budget. Your budget, which we talked about last week, helps us to hold ourselves accountable, keep us on track to meet our financial goals, and will ensure that you all have access to what a balance sheet, a cash flow statement, as well as the budget tools, right? And so what the balance sheet is, you're going to look at your assets, the things that you actually own. And then you're going to look at your liabilities, things that you have debt obligations that you owe. And that's how you create your net worth. And your net worth will tell you how wealthy you are, right? And so in that, when we're talking about asset, while you may own a home, if you still are paying a mortgage on it, technically that is a liability, right? And so it's still a debt. It may be a positive debt, but it's still a debt nonetheless. And so you want to look at, from an asset standpoint, right? Like what are the things that, such as your stocks, what's the cash you have on hand? If you do have a house and you own it and there's no mortgage on it, right? Like what's the value of that house? And then you can minus that from your liabilities, your monthly and yearly obligations, your bills, your car note, all of that. And that will calculate what your net worth is. And so there are a lot of people who are quote unquote millionaires, but their net worth is in a negative because of their liabilities. So while they may have $3 to $5 million cash on hand in the bank, if you have a $15 million house that's not paid off, you have negative of a net worth because you have that debt. You can't move forward until that debt is actually cleared, and then you can actually increase what your net worth is. And so on the cash flow statement, we're looking at the income, the money that you earn, whether that's on a monthly, whether you know what your salary is, or if you're looking at like you have a side hustle and if I do this, this will be the money that I can earn. And so then you want to minus your expenses. What are your fixed expenses and your variable expenses? So fixed expenses would be your rent or your mortgage, your phone bill, your electricity or gas. Those are kind of fixed expenses. Variable expenses may be how much you're spending in gas a month for your car, how much you're spending on your groceries. If you have to, use public transportation, how much you're spending on that. Those are variable expenses because they may change on a month to month, week to week basis. And then once you do that, you can get your net discretionary income. What you should also remember is in your expenses, if you are one that's saving money, that should be considered an expense. It is not income. You are paying yourself, but it is still an expense that you should look at it from that. And so it will not be included in your net discretionary income because your savings is not the extra money that you have left over to help you build your wealth. The savings is for those rainy days that you put to the side and forget that you have until you need it. And so we're going to bring back Alexandria. We're going to get into some of those questions. First, let me apologize for the technical difficulties. As much as we try to get everything right, things still happen, sometimes out of our control. And so we appreciate you all being very patient throughout this this process. And so thank you for the grace and thank you for the engagement. We really want to continue to build on these sessions. We want to grow from this, and we want to look at how we move in this new age. And investing is something that a lot of people have been talking about, but they still talk at us and not with us about how to move in this space. We're never really talked to about when we're buying something, we're actually shareholders, right? Like we have paid into a company, and so that company owes us a debt, right? Like they can't make money if we are not continuing to buy the products, if we're not investing in them. And so this was more so ensuring that we had the space that we can provide that information and some tools. Now, I say this, and I go back to the question that was raised about stocks. We are not your financial advisors or counselors or in a position to have that relationship to advise you on what stocks to buy or not buy. There's a fiduciary responsibility that comes with that. And so we want to make sure that in this is all about educational and from an informative standpoint. And you can take that knowledge and then go and speak to someone who is not saying that we're not trained in that space, but that's not the space that we're occupying today to be able to provide you with insights on where to invest your money. And we want to make sure that, we honor the space that is here from an educational standpoint. And so I wanted to address the question that was raised about certain stocks that uplift the Black community. Oh, you're muted. There you go, Alex.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you for that. I think that was the same thing that I was thinking, right? That it is a space of education, right? And knowledge is power, right? Literally, right? So we want to make sure that we understand what we're getting into before we get into it, and that you have the right, that your financial house is in order, that you have the right foundation before you begin to invest. So thank you for that. And so if you all can start putting some questions in the chat for us.
I see one from Patrick, so I wanted to address that.
Okay.
That was a little earlier. So Patrick had a question about the Nike and the Walmart, and so he says if the reason folks are buying up Nike stock, and folks are investing because they believe you will use your stimulus money to buy Nikes, and then Walmart is sold off, deemed no longer relevant in regard to making money because folks are using extra cash and won't continue to going to Walmart. So it's two things, right, Patrick? We don't really know why someone is buying, right? Like it's all speculation. The if so in that example, if Nike stock was rising, it could be because they've announced that next year they're going to release a lot of unreleased shoes, or they've made expansions into spaces and plan to open new factories, or it could be a multitude of things. It could be speculation that with this influx of cash, there will be people who buy up more. So it's hard to really pinpoint exactly why a stock rises from that aspect, right? Like from the emotional, outside of from a financial. If you're seeing gains, right? Like if you can see the numbers increasing, then that tells you why something is moving. But it's hard to decide exactly from an emotional, and that goes the same with Walmart, right? Like Walmart could have had um just two bad quarters, right? And so people are like, it's time to jump ship. Or there could have been a public situation, right? Like, so I don't know it. I have to go back and look at the situation that happened a couple years ago with the young man who was killed in Ohio in a Walmart with the gun, right? Like their stock might have taken a plummet because that was negative press that took place, and that made people not want to go. So there's just multiple factors that can take place as to why a stock is rising or falling. And there's people that are out there, right? Like you watch your Financial Times and news, and they will say, but most times it's based off of profit and sales.
Awesome. We had another question about handouts, and Jasmine answered that. So you will receive workshop materials via email after the workshop is over. And I saw another question about, when do you hire a financial advisor? When and if should we meet with the financial planner?
Um, so that's a personal question, right? Like it depends on where you are, right? Like, so you don't necessarily have to have these boatloads of money. If you are banking with most of the traditional banks, the big banks, you can meet with them for free, right? Like they have a lot of these services. And then there are actually also community organizations such as the YWCA that have services like this. So if you are in the space and you have questions, that's the time for you to meet with a financial planner. Um, if you feel like you're about to come into a substantial amount of money and you want to use it in the best place possible, you should meet with a financial planner, right? Like if you're like, okay, it's just time for me to get my stuff together, you should meet with a financial planner, right? Like if you're at any point have questions that are not easily accessible, then I always recommend going with someone that is a specialist in that space. And there are a lot of people who actually do it for free, so you don't have to pay for that service.
Yeah, and thank you for giving us a shout out. I put it in the chat, right? YWCA Metropolitan Chicago, and it's a secret, right? But I'm letting the cat out the bag. A lot of folks don't know that within the last year, YWCA Metropolitan Chicago got into the housing counseling industry, and so we have counselors. I feel like one of those old commercials. We have counselors on standby. Call us now, but we do. We have housing counselors who assist folks with purchasing a home, a condo, two flat, all that. But as part of that process of helping you meet that financial goal to buy a house, we also do financial coaching. So if you need, so do what email says, right? Go look at your expenses, do your budget. But if you need a little bit of support, that's what the financial counselors or housing counselors are there for. It's completely free. We are funded by a lot of amazing institutions that allow us to provide this service to the community. So thank you for that, Emil. And I'm just making sure we didn't, another question is, how much does it, and so this will probably be we'll take maybe one more question after this. How much does it cost to usually buy any stock?
So stock prices range, right? You're higher in, right? Like you have some stocks like Tesla that is at $1,000 per share, but then you have stocks as low as a couple pennies or $2 a share, right? And so it really depends on the stock. It depends on the company. and what their earnings are. It depends on if you're getting in before they go public, right? So there are stocks that you can buy before they do their quote unquote IPO, which is the initial public offering. And that's before they go major and public. And you're buying into that's the speculation of what something is going to be valued at. And so I'm not going to plug any particular platform, but there's a lot of platforms out there that are user friendly. And also, like I said, if you are someone who has a traditional banking, they have the information available to you as to how to get into buying stocks. But there's just a lot of websites. Google is very friendly. You just have to know exactly what to type in. Because if you type in the wrong thing, of course, everything comes up. But there's a lot of platforms out there that are very friendly for beginners and novice around getting into buying stocks, selling stocks, what the process is. And we have a lot of apps that are on our phone that make it easily accessible. Be careful with that, because at the same time of this being investing, it is also a form of gambling, right? And so you have to understand and make sure that you have the money available to take those risks. Once you put it out there, you should immediately think that it's gone, right? Like, and until you actually return an investment on it, it's a loss and it should be carried as such. Even if you put $100 out there and the stock price rises $500, until that money is back into your account, treat it as a loss so that you can be mindful of how you're operating with your actual disposable income.
Awesome. And I think it's our time now. So just want to do a couple of housekeeping items before we close out. So again, want to thank you again, Email Washington, that dude, right? Who is also, I'm going to get you a shirt, that's a hoodie that says that, who is also the CEO of Black Film. And so when I was off camera, I was 100% nerding out his the glasses, right? And just a couple of things, because I just want to share, like, I appreciate going through this training too as a practitioner, because it gives me new language so I can be extra smart, and show off when I'm in different spaces. But it also reminds me of some things, and just a couple of things I want to share, that the importance of learning economics, right? In my a few years ago, I worked for a school district, the third largest school district, and there was a curriculum that kids needed to go through for the graduation requirement, and economics was the part of the unit that kids felt like was the most boring, or it was hard for teachers to teach, right? And it's almost like they don't want you to learn about economics, right? Because then why, right? I think having all the financial knowledge is important, but if you can kind of wrap your mind around the economy for certain reasons, right, you'll be able to make predictions about how markets might behave in the future. You'll better understand fiscal policy and fiscal decisions made by Congress. You can gain insight into taxes and inflation. You can manage stress around investing and the stock market, and you can have better decision making as a consumer. And I know that, Email, you touched on some those things, but I was just like mind blown, right? Because if you learn about the economy, it makes you really dangerous in a good way, right? You can have better control of your finances and think beyond kind of your day-to-day and your checkbook or your bank account. I think it gives you a more global perspective. So I just wanted to, just really put that out there. And even talking about shareholders' rights and monetary policy and stock prices, you, to me, gave a trap economics lesson today, Email, right? And so I appreciate that. So folks, pay attention to what's happening around you. Pay attention to policy decisions. Pay attention to folks that are getting elected and all these things, because those are the things that really affect your finances. So again, nerding out, and I'm going to get off of my soapbox, but Can I just get an amen though, Emil?
Absolutely, absolutely. And as a practice going in for next week, like I said, there's earnings reports coming out this week. So if you all are looking at stocks, pick a couple stocks, and just track them with the earnings, and then track them how they do in comparison to the stock market, right? So take Apple, take the actual Robinhood stock. Robinhood released their earnings on Thursday. See if that's something you might be interested in investing in, and then see how did they do. Did they do well, or did they, not do well? And if they did not do well, look to see who was impacted by that in a positive and negative way. And that's your cheat code, right? You want to see not only what this stock did, but if this one is doing well, what's the impact around it? And that's really where the money is made. It's not on one stock, but the actual ecosystem as a whole.
Yeah, and that's how you become an informed investor. And speaking of becoming informed, make sure that you take advantage of the free membership we have with Best Money Moves. After you get off of this session, you should receive an email with a link and a code to access these financial wellness resources so you can read about stocks. You can take a financial stress test, all kind of cool stuff. You can create a debt reduction plan, and it's 100% free. I'd also like to thank Black Film for this partnership with YWCA Metropolitan Chicago. And then, Emil, next week is the final session. I don't know what I'm going to do on Tuesdays without you, man.
We'll just have to do some more later on in the year.
Yeah. And so our final session is next Tuesday, February 1st, and we're going to talk about activist investing. So we talked about financial security, material security, right? We talked about financial trauma. We talked about building wealth in the age of COVID. And then next week, activist investing. So if you haven't signed up, make sure you sign up. And also, YWCA has an amazing new endeavor, the Respect Card, which helps you build and boost your credit while you're spending money the way you usually do. It allows you to report on-time rent payments that will boost your credit. So check out the Respect Card. Again, yet another tool that's out there for you all. So thank you again, Emil. We look forward to seeing you all. Same bat time, same bat channel next week. Did I just date myself? Yes. February 1st for activist investing. So thank you all, and be safe and be well.
Thank you.